She came through my ceiling.
This just happened a few days ago, and I'm extremely shaken up. Some backstory. I live on the second floor of a 3-level apartment. We have a crawl space that connects all the apartments. We aren't sure why it's there, but we all have stuff in it, and none of us would ever even attempt to go inside of it, so we still felt pretty safe. The other night, the sun was setting, but it wasn't pitch black out or anything yet. I'm walking through my living room when I see a short woman on my fire escape looking into my windows. This is extremely bizarre considering it's still semi-light out, and she had to literally get onto our fire escape somehow. We have 2 windows that the fire escape reaches, and she was looking in both but didn't see me. I crawled onto the ground, and my heart was racing as I watched her try to open the windows. I didn't know what the fuck to do because my phone was in the other room. After what seemed like an eternity, she finally left. I went into my room to get my phone to text my landlord and call the cops. I came back into the living room and was looking out the windows to see if I could locate her, when all of a sudden I hear a weird noise coming from the ceiling. We have one of those tile ceilings made out of separate slabs of cork and wood. I look up to see one of the slabs lifted up and 2 eyes staring at me. I have no clue how she got into the crawl space so quickly, but I grabbed the nearest thing next to me, which was a broom, and started hitting her with it through the ceiling, and called the cops as soon as she crawled away. They showed up and searched the place and didn't find her until a few days later when she was on someone else's fire escape. The cops said she was definitely on some hard drugs and that she was violent towards them. I'm glad she's gone, but whoever that crazy lady that came through my ceiling was, let's not meet again.
He asked to smell my hands.
I posted this once in another thread, but here we go. When I was around 11 years old, I was at home babysitting my younger cousins while my mom went to the grocery store. We lived in a basement apartment. The basement only had 2 apartments that were right across from each other. On the side our apartment was on, there was a laundry room. The laundry room was fairly large, and that's where most people who had bikes would chain them. I was watching television with my younger cousins when I heard a knock on the door. This was super weird to me already, because literally no one ever visited us out of nowhere, and my mother had her own key. I was still super short, so I had to get a small chair to stand on so I could look through the peephole. I looked through the peephole and there was some giant dude I had never seen before. I remember saying, "Hi," and then saying, "Can I help you?" The door was still definitely locked though. This man proceeds to tell me that his bike was stolen from the laundry room. He didn't continue talking though, so I said, I'm sorry, He proceeds to repeat himself, but then adds that he knows what his bike smells like. I remember being so fucking confused and could not imagine where he was going with this. I said, "I'm sorry your bike got stolen." Then he says that because he knows what his bike smells like, that I have to open the door so he can smell my hands. Smell my fucking hands. I got so freaked out that I almost started crying and kept saying, "I'm sorry, but I didn't steal your bike." He started getting super aggressive and pounding on the door and saying that he needs to smell my hands so he can make sure that I didn't steal his bike. I then got off the chair and just started screaming, "Mom!" over and over again as if she was home. This was all for his benefit because I speak a different language and would never call my mother Mom. I did this throughout the apartment as if I was going to get her, and when I checked afterwards, he was gone. Let's not meet again. Stolen bike / hand smelling weirdo.
I will never know who it was.
This occurred when I was about 8 years old and lived with my family in Brazil. My aunt was in the hospital for liver issues, and everyone in the family had accepted that she would not be around for a while. Since our house was bigger than my other relatives, everyone decided that it would be best for her to stay at our place. Later on, she was transferred to the hospital, and my mom and relatives would take time to visit her. Just to give some background, my family can be a bit superstitious, and my mom was no exception. Since everyone knew that my aunt could not be saved, there was always this dark feeling lingering throughout the house. Due to this, I was always scared to go to the bathroom at nights. I shared a bed with my sister, and it was the only way I had peace of mind to fall asleep. On this particular night, I could feel myself almost pissing my pants. My dad never liked any of the lights on because of the expensive electricity bills, so I was always afraid he would yell at me if I turned them on. My only hope was to wake my sister, but she was so deep in her sleep and didn't wake no matter the number of times I pulled at her hair. I couldn't hold it in anymore and decided that I was going to make a run for it. I was going to run to the bathroom, which was down the hall, pee, and run back. Now, in Brazil, I should note that houses are closely situated. Our bathroom was next to the kitchen with large windows, and my neighbor's porch light dimly lit our entire kitchen. This was always calming to think of, since I knew I won't be in complete darkness after all. I jumped out of the bed and ran to the kitchen, opened the fridge to grab a piece of fruit, and ran into the toilet. Yes, I know, eating on the toilet is gross, but I was 8 and didn't care about germs at the time. So I'm sitting on the toilet peeing and eating when I heard crackling noises in the kitchen. Since my mom would wake around 4:30 a.m. to cook and travel to my aunt's hospital room in time for breakfast at 6 a.m., I figured my mom must have been awake. I called out for her, but no one answered. After the crackling grew continuously, I looked over at the kitchen clock. I didn't know how to read time proficiently, but I could tell that it was around 4 a.m. I got a bit scared and tried to look closer into the darkness. That is exactly when I saw the shadow of a woman staring at me. I could barely make out her face as the kitchen was dimly lit from the neighbor's porch light. The thing is, the woman's body shape appeared to look exactly like my mom's, so I remembered saying, "Mama, you need to use the bathroom?" In Portuguese, of course, and the person never responded. I figured she was getting ready to go visit my aunt, but was just a little tired. The figure kept staring into my direction. I couldn't see her eyes or face. I just knew that whoever it was, they were looking at my direction and had a womanly figure. It is fair to note that all this occurred in under 3 minutes as I was done peeing. I got up from the toilet and said, "Good night, Mom," and ran back to the bedroom. As I was running down the hall to the bedroom, I looked back and saw her turn, facing me as she sat down at the kitchen table. I went back into the room to see my sister still asleep. I cuddled up against her and fell asleep right away. The next morning around 9 a.m., I woke up to my mom cooking in the kitchen. I ran to her to ask how my aunt was and to ask what she was cooking. I told her that I saw her in the kitchen the night before and asked why she didn't say anything to me. My mom's face looked really puzzled, and she kept asking me to explain exactly what I saw. She looked very worried and called my father and kept asking me if I'm sure I wasn't dreaming. I insisted to her that I wasn't because I knew I was awake and had experienced this. My mom later told me that she had asked the nurse to stay with my aunt all night in the hospital, and she wasn't home all night, and that my dad was working night shift, so my sister and I were home alone. This scared the living shit out of me because I knew that I saw someone. I knew I wasn't dreaming. My mom believed in paranormal stuff and told me that it could have been an angel coming to bless our house since my aunt was in the hospital. But I don't believe in any of that stuff, not even as a child. Still, to this day, I can't figure out who that woman was, staring into my direction and not saying a word. Whoever she is, I hope we never meet again.
The guy who cut my house's electricity and tried to break in.
This happened 4 years back. I was about 14 years old, and my parents were out and had left me and my little sister, 10 at the time, home alone. It was about 10 to 11 p.m. when the lights go out. This used to happen sometimes in my country since it's a new country and really poor. But that time I noticed something out of the ordinary. Only the lights in our house were out, and my neighbor's lights were on. I had a bad feeling, so I quickly lock all the doors and close the blinds. I told my little sister to hide behind the couch and not go out whatever happened. I hid somewhere else with a knife, tried to call my mom, but she didn't pick up, so I waited. I thought it was over so I could get out of my hiding place and head to the kitchen, where we had the back door, to look out the window. Before I get close, I hear the doorknob turning. It doesn't work, so the person on the other side tries it again, now violently. That's where I panicked and I shouted, "Who the fuck are you? Fuck off my house. I have called the police." I hear footsteps and then nothing. I went to the other room and looked out the window, and I saw someone running out of my backyard. My sister was crying, so I comforted her while we stayed hidden until my parents came home after an hour. We told them everything, and my dad said that whoever it was, he had intentionally cut the house's electricity to scare us. To this day, every time the electricity goes out, I get kinda scared, and I'm glad we are okay.
He could have broken in.
Some backstory to this. I was 14 at the time this happened. My family keeps 3 firearms in the house, one 40 caliber, one 32, and a 20 gauge. My sister and mom were out doing volleyball shit, which meant I had the house all to myself. I turned up the YouTube video I was watching and brought some food to my room. 30 minutes go by and there is 5 rapid knocks on my door. Jesus fuck, buddy. You don't need to bang that much or so loud, I thought. I'm not a fucking idiot, so I didn't get up, considering Jehovah's Witnesses had been harassing us for a while. Another set of knocks. I'm ready to beat someone's ass at this point, since no one except crazy exes knock like that. It was silent for 5 minutes. Good riddance, I thought, and went back to what I was doing. Then I heard some tapping at my window, then my parents' window, and then I hear the fence make some metallic sounds. Fuck this. I went to my parents' room and got the 20 gauge and 4 shells. The tapping had stopped at the living room. I walked over, set the shotgun down, and pulled back the curtains. The man jumped back and began to shout shit like, "Let me the fuck in," and "I will fucking kill you if I have to." I figured reasoning was out of the question, so I grabbed the shotgun off the couch and loaded a shell in it and cocked it. The man went still. I loaded the 2 other shells I had grabbed and just said, "You have 30 seconds to get the fuck off my property before I give you a new beehive." You can imagine how fast he ran. I never called 911, but his stupid ass was arrested 3 weeks later. So, dumb as shit criminal. Let's not meet again.
twisting doorknob.
Hey guys, I have a few somewhat creepy stories, but this one takes the cake as the freakiest. I'm a male and was about 16 at the time. Anyways, my family and I went to go visit some relatives we had in a foreign country. I was born and raised in the USA, but we still go back often to visit relatives. My dad didn't want to keep paying for a hotel, so a few years back, we bought an apartment. This trip was our first time staying at the apartment. The way the apartment is set up there is the living room is where the only entry is, and the only air-conditioned spot. My dad was still back in the US finishing up some business as he was gonna meet us there at a later time. So it was my mom, my three brothers, one older, two younger, and I. The landlord who gave my mom the key was sort of creepy from her description, but it didn't really alarm anyone that much. Also important to the story, my mom got the key and met the landlord alone since we were still taking care of things at my uncle's house. It's now been a few weeks and my mom couldn't stand her room since there was no air conditioning. I didn't blame her, so we all slept in the living room. Nothing out of the ordinary happened until about 4 weeks into staying there. At around 2 a.m., my mom was waking me up, but with her finger over her mouth, basically saying, "Keep quiet." My mom never does this, so I shot up and made a hand motion asking what was going on. She pointed to the door, and someone was jiggling the doorknob. We had forgot the lock, but thank God my older brother got into the habit of chain locks from his college days. It should be noted that my brother was dead asleep in another room, so I was now the oldest male. My mom was distraught, and I was thinking about what to do. I was still thankful that at least the chain lock was there, but I think the man on the other side noticed that that was all. I see a face pressed up from the small gap, and I shit you not, it was the fucking landlord. He finally, after about 10 minutes, gives up, or so I thought. The next thing I see is a coat hanger trying to open the chain lock. I finally decide to do something, so I body check the door, slamming it shut, locked the actual lock, and yelled in the foreign tongue what would be equivalent to, "Fuck off." I look through the peephole and the man seemed surprised to hear a man's voice. I guess he assumed since my mom was the only one to check in, she was the only one living there. He scrambled down the stairs. All said and done, he was gone by 2:30 a.m. I looked out of the window across the street at the landlord's house, and he just stared at me and then turned the lights off in his house. When we woke up, I told my brother. He still credits himself for the chain lock. I do too, but I think I deserve a little credit. We called the police, but they said we really didn't have any evidence and that it was my word against his. My mom wasn't sure it was the landlord, but I swore it was him, that I had seen him. My dad arrived about 4 days later and I told him the story. He met the landlord and agreed he was creepy. My dad actually believed me, and my mom didn't feel safe anymore, so we left that apartment the day after my dad arrived. As we drove away, the landlord gave me a little smirk and wave. By now it was daylight and I kinda wanted to beat the shit out of him. Anyways, to the creepy guy who tried to break in and probably attack my mom, let's never meet.
He came back the next night.
This happened a long time ago, about 14 years ago when I was 8 years old. My brother was 9 years old at the time, and we had just celebrated Christmas. My parents had separated just a few months before that, so in my house was just my dad, my brother, and I, and our German Shepherd. We had all gone to bed for the night. After a good night's sleep, we woke up to some scary news. While we were asleep, someone broke into our house. I guess our guard dog just kind of followed him through the house instead of being vicious and protective like we taught him to, because he didn't bark at all or even come to wake us up, even as the strange masked man was crawling through our doggy door and coming in through the garage in the middle of the night. He just followed him around like a new guest. The man that broke in took my brother's PS2, the TV, and the SUV, and as kids, those were some big losses, but none of it was as concerning as the fact that he also took the house keys. There are some discrepancies on whether or not my dad tried hard enough to get the locks changed, but in one day, it was really challenging to get someone who was able to replace locks on 200-pound doors. It was one of those Medico high security locks, and despite his efforts, I guess he couldn't get them replaced in one day. None of this really seemed too important to us as kids, because he said he'd keep us safe. He was prepared. He said he was prepared. Night comes and we are still very shaken up, so we get in our dad's bed and I'm about to fall asleep when the alarm goes off. Not the alarm that gives you the warning ring, like when you open the front door when you get home. It was the alarm that goes off on a window or door that should never be opened unless the alarm was off. My dad shot out of bed, grabbed his revolver, and ran downstairs. I panicked. I looked at my brother who was frozen in place, and my first instinct was to throw the covers over me. I was terrified. How is this happening again? Why did he come back? Didn't he get enough the first time? I hear the phone ring, but I can't move. It keeps ringing. It feels like it's been ringing nonstop for 5 minutes. My brother asked me to get it because in my memory, my dad had asked me to make the call to 911 or pick up the phone if someone called, but I just couldn't move. My brother picks up the phone. It's the alarm company. He says, "I think we're being robbed." He hangs up the phone. Downstairs, we hear a loud shot, then another one. We're not allowed to leave the room. Was my dad just shot? Was he shot twice? Or did he shoot the guy once and then get shot? Another shot, then another. Silence. I later learned what happened. My dad came downstairs to find that the kitchen door was open. He had used the keys to come through the back, and that's what set off the alarm. He made his way through the kitchen to the family room, where he saw a computer and was trying to pull it out of the wall. My dad saw the dark room and a shadowed figure and fired. He was wearing all dark clothes, a mask, and a skull cap. My dad was in his tidy whities. My dad, fearing for his life, and this stranger who had hit our home twice at this point, continued to fire. The man ran through the house. In an interview with the police, when they asked him why he ran past the side door, he responded that he shouldn't have, but was panicking, stating, "I just wanted to get the fuck out." At this point, a terrified father and a terrified intruder are having a wordless chase through my house as my brother and I sit upstairs. The man reached the window as my dad stood on the stairs. Between them was the front door, but to use that door was too terrifying to him, so he hit his head into the paned window until it shattered. He fell through the window onto the storm grate and then ran for the car he had stolen the night before. He made it to the hospital, passed out on the lawn, and was arrested there. He was from Chicago, and he was a long-time offender. He had a record of 34 break-ins in 7 different states. He was just recently paroled, and the first thing he wanted was to hit a house so he could get some money for crack. The hollow point bullet that hit him left his arm non-functional. I feel bad for the guy, for the stuff he's gone through to get to this point. But for my sake, let's never meet again.